Kunta sat on the cold stone floor of the palace, his heart pounding with fear. He had just learned the truth. The man he had killed in battle was his father, the king, and the queen, his beloved wife, was his mother. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the terrible mistake he had made. The gods had cursed him from birth. In a fit of horror and rage, Kunta took a sharp dagger and plucked out his own eyes. He could no longer bear to see the world or his children. From that day, he wandered the kingdom as a blind beggar, filled with shame and sorrow. Many years before Kunta's tragic fate, King Oka and Queen Naana of the great city of Abomi had been happy when their son was born. But their joy was short-lived when the village seer came to the palace with a terrible prophecy. She told them that their newborn son would grow up to kill his father and marry his mother. The king and queen were horrified. To stop the prophecy from coming true, they decided to send the baby away. A servant was ordered to take the baby into the wilderness and kill him, but the servant's heart was too soft. Instead, he left the baby near a small village, hoping someone would take care of him. Kunta was found by a kind and humble farmer, Kwasi, who lived in the village of Tano. Kwasi and his wife, Amma, had no children of their own, so they took in the abandoned infant and raised him as their own son. Kunta grew up surrounded by love, unaware of his royal lineage or the terrible prophecy that shadowed his existence. Years passed, and Kunta blossomed into a strong and intelligent young man. He was known for his wit and bravery, often leading the other village boys in daring adventures. Yet, despite his seemingly happy life, Kunta often felt a deep sense of longing and an unexplainable connection to something beyond the simple life he knew. As Kunta grew older, the peaceful life he knew in Tano began to feel confining. There was a growing sense inside him, a pull he couldn't explain, like invisible threads tugging at his heart. It wasn't just curiosity about the world beyond the village. It was deeper, something more urgent. It came to him in his dreams, vivid, haunting visions of a faraway city, a towering palace, and a faceless woman calling out his name. Each night the dreams became stronger, more intense, leaving him drenched in sweat when he awoke. One night, Kunta had the strangest dream of all. He stood at the edge of a vast mountain, overlooking a valley filled with mist. In the distance, a towering figure cloaked in shadows beckoned him closer. As he stepped forward, the ground beneath him cracked and shifted. The figure raised its hand and pointed toward a grand city on the horizon. The figure's voice, deep and rumbling like thunder, echoed through the air. "Abomi awaits you, Kunta. Abomi calls for you." He woke up with a start, his heart racing. The name Abomi lingered in his mind like a whispered secret. He had heard the name before from traveling traders who spoke of it as a great city of power, ruled by a mighty king. But why was it calling to him? Kunta couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a dream. It was a message, a sign. The following morning, as Kunta went about his usual chores on the farm, strange things began to happen. The skies darkened even though it was midday, and a cold wind blew through the village, chilling everyone to the bone. Animals grew restless, birds circled the sky in strange patterns, and the usually calm river that flowed through the village began to churn violently, as if something had disturbed its depths. Old Ni, the village elder, was the first to notice. He walked slowly to Kunta and whispered, "There's a change in the air, boy. The spirits are speaking. They are restless, and they call to you." Kunta felt a shiver down his spine. How did Ni know? It was as if the old man could see the dreams that had plagued him. That night, as Kunta sat outside his home, staring up at the sky, he noticed the stars seemed to form strange patterns. The constellations, which had always been familiar, now looked different, almost as if they were pointing him in a direction. The wind carried whispers, faint but unmistakable. "Abomi, Abomi," the wind seemed to say. Unable to resist any longer, Kunta approached Kwasi and Amma, his adoptive parents. With a heavy heart, he told them about his dreams, about the strange occurrences, and about the name that kept echoing in his mind, Abomi. Amma's face turned pale, and she glanced at Kwasi nervously. Kwasi looked troubled, but said nothing at first. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Kunta, we have always known this day would come. You are not like the other children of Tano. From the moment we found you, abandoned near the riverbank, we knew you were destined for something greater, something beyond this village." Kunta's eyes widened. "Found me? What do you mean? Aren't you—" The words caught in his throat. Kwasi placed a hand on his shoulder, his eyes filled with sorrow. "No, Kunta, we are not your real parents. You were found as a baby, wrapped in a fine cloth, left at the edge of the river. The gods must have placed you in our path. But we always knew that one day they would come for you." The revelation hit Kunta like a bolt of lightning. His entire world, everything he thought he knew about himself, crumbled in an instant. His head spun and his heart ached with confusion. "Why now? Why do the gods want me to leave?" he asked, his voice trembling. Amma, her eyes filled with tears, shook her head. "We don't know, Kunta, but the spirits of this land have been watching over you since the day you arrived. Now they are calling you away. Abomi is where you must go." Kunta felt a wave of panic. He didn't want to leave the only home he had ever known, but deep inside he knew he had no choice. Something far greater than him was pulling him toward Abomi. The dreams, the whispers, the signs, they were all leading him to his true destiny. As Kunta prepared to leave the village, Old Ni approached him one last time. "Remember this, boy," the elder said in a low voice. "The gods do not reveal everything at once. What you seek in Abomi may not be what you find. Be careful, for the path you walk is one marked by shadows and secrets." Kunta nodded, though his heart was heavy with uncertainty. He hugged Kwasi and Amma one final time, thanking them for raising him with love and kindness. Then, with only a small sack of food and water, Kunta set off toward Abomi, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. As he walked away from Tano, the sky above him seemed to grow darker, and the wind whispered strange words that he could not understand. The further he went, the more the land around him seemed to shift and change, as if the world itself was bending to guide him on his journey. Unknown to Kunta, the gods had already set their plan in motion, and his every step was leading him closer to a fate he could not escape. The city of Abomi awaited him, not with open arms, but with the curse that had been woven into his very blood. And the tragedy that would unfold would be one no mortal could have foreseen. After many days of traveling, Kunta finally reached Abomi. The city was larger and more beautiful than he had imagined. The streets were full of people, markets were busy, and the royal palace towered over everything. Kunta wandered through the city, amazed by the sights and sounds. But there was something about the palace that felt familiar to him, though he didn't understand why. He felt drawn to it, as if it were calling him. One day, Kunta heard about a wrestling match being held in the city square. The winner would earn a place in the royal guard, serving the king himself. Kunta, strong and skilled, decided to join. The match was fierce, but Kunta's strength and quick thinking helped him win. The people cheered for him, and King Oka, impressed by Kunta's performance, invited him to join his royal guard. Kunta gladly accepted, not knowing that the king was his real father. Queen Naana noticed Kunta as soon as he joined the royal guard. There was something about him that caught her eye. He reminded her of the son she had lost so many years ago. As time went on, the queen invited Kunta to dine with her, and the two became close. Kunta, unaware of his true connection to the queen, felt drawn to her as well. The people in the palace began to whisper about their relationship, but neither Kunta nor the queen paid any attention to the rumors. One day, while on a hunting trip, Kunta and King Oka's hunting party were attacked by bandits. In the heat of battle, Kunta and the king got separated from the others. In a moment of confusion, Kunta fought the bandits fiercely, and in the struggle he unknowingly killed the king, his own father. When the battle was over and Kunta realized what he had done, he was devastated, but no one knew the truth on who actually killed the king. The people of Abomi mourned the king's death, but they looked to Kunta as their hero. They asked him to take the throne, unaware of the dark secret that bound him to the king. After the king's death, the people insisted that Kunta marry Queen Nana and take the throne. Kunta, still heartbroken over the king's death but unaware of his true connection to the queen, agreed to marry her. Their wedding was celebrated with great joy, but the gods watched in silence, knowing the curse was still in play. Kunta became the new king of Abomi, and he ruled with strength and wisdom. But something was wrong. Strange things began to happen in the kingdom. Crops failed, sickness spread, and the people began to grow fearful. As the troubles in the kingdom grew worse, the people turned to the seer for answers. She told them that the gods were angry, but she didn't reveal the full truth right away. The land would continue to suffer until the curse was lifted. Kunta was desperate to save his kingdom, but he didn't understand why the gods were punishing them. He and Queen Nana prayed to the gods and consulted the oracle, hoping for a solution. In the grand halls of the palace, whispers began to echo in the shadows. Court officials, elders, and even soldiers gathered in hushed conversations, exchanging glances filled with suspicion. Some believed that Kunta's rise to the throne had been too sudden, too convenient. How could a stranger, a man who had arrived out of nowhere, so easily defeat the forces that had long terrorized the kingdom? These doubts, once mere ripples of unease, grew into a conspiracy that threatened not only Kunta's crown, but the very truth of his origins. It began with Tano, the chief advisor to Kunta, a man whose loyalty had always seemed unquestionable. Tano had served under the previous king and had seen firsthand the chaos that unfolded when the former ruler was killed. He was the one who had guided Kunta through the early days of his rule, offering counsel and ensuring that the transition of power was smooth. But lately, Tano had grown distant, his once sharp eyes now clouded with doubt and something darker, jealousy. In secret meetings, Tano began to sow seeds of doubt among the other advisors and high-ranking officials. "Have you ever wondered," he would say, his voice low and conspiratorial, "where Kunta truly came from? How a man with no ties to this land could be offered the seat to the throne without any context?" He leaned closer, his tone dripping with malice. "And what of the late king's murder? They say no one knows who did it. Yet Kunta arrived not long after. Could it be?" The words hung in the air like poison, infecting the minds of those who listened. Soon, others began to question Kunta's legitimacy. Some whispered that he was not the rightful king, that he had somehow manipulated the prophecy to gain power. Others speculated that his mysterious origins were not a sign of divine favor, but rather something far more sinister. Tano, seeing that his words were taking root, decided to escalate his plans. He sought out the most influential elders in the kingdom, men who held sway over the people's beliefs and perceptions. He arranged private meetings with them in the dead of night, careful to avoid the prying eyes of the palace guards. In one such meeting, Tano gathered with 4 elders in a dimly lit chamber deep within the palace. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows on their faces, making them appear like ancient spirits summoned from the underworld. Tano spoke with conviction, his voice steady and persuasive. "The kingdom flourishes, yes," Tano began, pacing slowly around the room. "But at what cost? There is a secret here, one that the gods themselves are hiding from us. Kunta was a stranger, yet he has claimed the throne as if it were his birthright. But what do we truly know of him? And why has the land not been cleansed of its curse, despite his rule?" One of the elders, an old man with a hunched back and a sharp mind, squinted his eyes and muttered, "What are you suggesting, Tano?" Tano stopped pacing and leaned in, his voice a whisper, barely audible. "I am suggesting, my friends, that we may have placed our trust in the wrong man. There are forces at work here that we cannot see. The gods are displeased, and the curse remains because the one who should be king is not on the throne." The room fell silent as the weight of Tano's words sank in. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, the tension thickening like smoke. "But how do we prove this?" another elder asked, his voice trembling with fear. "If Kunta is not the rightful king, then who is?" Tano's lips curled into a thin, calculating smile. "I have my suspicions, and with your help, I can uncover the truth. There are old records, hidden within the palace archives, that speak of the prophecy and the true heir to the throne. If we can find these records, we will have the proof we need." The elders nodded, their greed for power overtaking their better judgment. They had ruled behind the scenes for far too long, and now they saw an opportunity to regain control. Tano had them in his grasp, and together they plotted to unravel Kunta's life, starting with the investigation into his origins. Meanwhile, unaware of the conspiracy brewing around him, Kunta continued his duties as king, blissfully ignorant of the dark clouds gathering over his reign. He found solace in his wife, Queen Naana, who had been his steadfast companion and advisor. The two had built a life together, filled with love and mutual respect, though Kunta sometimes felt a strange distance between them, a nagging sense that something was missing. But the gods were not done with their cruel game. As Tano and the elders delved deeper into their investigation, they uncovered a hidden chamber within the palace archives, one that had not been opened in decades. Inside they found scrolls covered in dust, ancient texts that detailed the prophecy of Abomi's true king and the fate of the kingdom. What they discovered shocked them to their core. The prophecy, written in the old tongue, spoke of a child born to the royal family, cursed by the gods for the sins of their ancestors. This child would be cast out, abandoned at birth, and destined to return unknowingly to the kingdom, only to kill the king and marry his own mother. The curse would bring ruin to the land until the truth was revealed. Tano's heart raced as he pieced together the terrible truth. Kunta was that child, the stranger who had appeared from nowhere, the man who had killed the previous king in a chance encounter, the husband of Queen Naana. He was the true heir, but he was also the cursed one. The very man they had crowned as king was the cause of the kingdom's suffering. Armed with this knowledge, Tano prepared to strike. He would reveal the truth to the people, expose Kunta as the cursed child, and take control of the throne himself. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, one that would change the fate of Abomi forever. The conspiracy was in motion, and soon Kunta's life would unravel in ways he could never have imagined. Finally, before Tano could hatch his plan, the seer revealed the truth. Kunta was not the farmer's son from Tano. He was the son of King Oka and Queen Naana. The prophecy had come true. He had killed his father and married his mother, just as the gods had foretold. Kunta was shattered by the revelation. The guilt and horror of what he had done were too much to bear. Queen Nana was equally horrified when she learned the truth. Their lives had been built on a terrible lie, and now the gods had cursed them for it. Overcome with grief, Queen Nana couldn't live with the knowledge that she had married and had children with her own son. She took her own life, hoping her death would end the curse. But the curse only deepened, and the kingdom continued to suffer. Kunta was left alone to face the full weight of his crimes. The people of Abomi, once loyal to him, now turned against him, blaming him for the kingdom's troubles. Kunta, unable to live with the shame of his actions, took a sharp dagger and plucked out his own eyes. He could no longer bear to see the world or the people he had betrayed. Blind and broken, Kunta wandered the kingdom, now a beggar in the land he once ruled. The people who had once cheered his name now pitied him. His children, too, were left to live with the curse that had ruined their family. Without a leader, the kingdom of Abomi began to fall apart. The crops continued to fail, sickness spread, and the people grew desperate. The once great city was now a shadow of its former self. Kunta, wandering through the streets as a beggar, could hear the cries of his people. He knew that the kingdom's fate was tied to the curse of the gods, and that only his death could save them. In a last act of desperation, Kunta went to the village seer one final time. She told him that the only way to end the curse was to sacrifice himself to the gods. Kunta, knowing that he had nothing left to live for, agreed. The people gathered in the city square as Kunta, blind and broken, offered himself as a sacrifice. With his death, the curse would be lifted, and the kingdom would finally be free. When Kunta died, the curse was lifted, the skies cleared, the crops grew again, and the sickness disappeared. The people of Abomi mourned the loss of their king, but they were grateful that his sacrifice had saved them. Kunta's children, though innocent of their father's crimes, were left to live with the shadow of the curse. They grew up knowing the tragic story of their family, and they vowed to never repeat the mistakes of the past. The people of Abomi chose a new king, someone untainted by the curse of Kunta's bloodline. Under new leadership, the kingdom began to rebuild. The memory of Kunta's tragedy became a lesson for future generations. In time, Kunta's story became legend. People spoke of the blind beggar king who had once ruled the land, and the terrible curse that had destroyed his family. His story was told as a warning of the power of the gods and the danger of trying to escape fate.
Thank you for being part of this journey. If you found value in this content, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and spread the word by sharing with those who matter most to you. Your support means everything.